Evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Womack. I'm the director of the Bridges Institute for Texas AFT. Thank you for joining us this evening. If you could just make sure, just to go over a couple of house cleaning items, make sure that your screen name matches the name that you registered with. At the 1 hour mark at 7 o'clock, I will do attendance and I will go over to the how you registered and I will match your screen name with your registration name, and that's how I keep attendance. And then Dr. Claudia Morales will follow up with an email in the coming days with a link to the recording from tonight, along with any handouts that Taylor provides throughout this presentation. So make sure that your screen name matches the name that you registered with. I will catch attendance at the 1 hour mark. So with that, Dr. Morales, I will hand it over to you for you to introduce our special guest.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Dr. Claudia Morales, and I am very excited about tonight's session. We have an experienced, knowledgeable, fabulous facilitator with us with a career focus on the advocacy of human rights and the eradication of global injustice. Taylor first became familiar with trafficking while studying criminal justice at Sam Houston State and became inspired on how he could contribute to its eradication. Upon graduating, Taylor was accepted into the International Justice Mission intern and fellowship program, working within the investigations department in Kolkata, India. So he has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he's also a native Houstonian. So with that, I will turn it over to Taylor. Welcome, Taylor. Thank you for being with us. And I will give you an opportunity to talk about your career and what you do and lead us into this session this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morales. Good evening, everybody. As was mentioned, I am Taylor Woodruff. I am the Prevention and Outreach Manager for United Against Human Trafficking. I oversee all of our frontline education for professionals such as all of you. I also oversee our prevention workshops that we do, which I'll get into. But it's a pleasure being here today. Hope everyone's school year is off to a good start. If you haven't signed in, if you please just scan that QR code, let us know you stopped by. We also would love to give you certificate of completion once the training is over. So if you want, or I can always go back to this, but if you haven't already, please go ahead and sign in. Let it linger there for one more. Okay. Well, today we're going to be talking about how to identify and respond to human trafficking. Okay. We want to be able to educate frontline professionals such as all of you. But as I mentioned before, I work for United Against Human Trafficking, and we're in our 20th year here. Hold for applause. In our 20th year here in Houston, Texas, ending human trafficking, or in our fight to end human trafficking. And when we set out 3 years ago, we thought to ourselves, how can we make the biggest impact? We don't want to be a master of none. We want to really highlight the biggest ways we can make a difference. Just like how, when you get kids are older, you can't say, hey, I want to teach history, math, English, and this. Like, you really have to focus on the things that you do really, really well. Well, that's what we do here at Human Trafficking. When we set out 20 years ago, we focus on these 3 objectives as force multipliers. The first one is we want to educate the community. We want to share information with all the frontline professionals we work with. That includes police officers, healthcare professionals, teachers, social workers. We want to equip all of you not to only recognize human trafficking, but respond to it. Okay, I'm not interested in raising awareness. Let's face it, a billboard can raise awareness, a flyer in a coffee shop can raise awareness. I want to raise one's aptitude, one's ability to recognize and respond to human trafficking. We also lead a coalition of 50 other organizations here in the greater Houston area whose part of their objectives involves combating human trafficking. We also work on the prevention part. Does anybody want to take a guess on the average age someone enters into a life of exploitation? 10, okay. 8 from Nelson. The average ages are 12 to 14 years old. Okay. So, which is why we focus on our youth programming. We want to reach kids in that age where there's a higher susceptibility of them being potentially exploited. And we want to bring these workshops, not just the areas that are most easily accessible to us or the ones that are just going to respond to our emails. We want to make it a priority to bring this to areas, communities that are most vulnerable to human trafficking, whether it's those who are incarcerated, those who struggle with substance abuse, those who go to alternative schooling for behavioral issues. We want to really focus on bringing and equipping those who are most vulnerable with the knowledge of how to identify potential trafficking situations. We also work on empowering survivors as well. We have a crack team of social workers and case managers, in our department, in our client services department, who work hand in hand with those who have experienced human trafficking and how they can best regain that autonomy after being robbed of it. So as I mentioned before, the average age of being trafficked is anywhere between 12 and 14. What are some needs you think you may have once you leave or get out of a trafficking situation? Does anybody want to take a guess? I would say trauma, yeah, education, housing, therapy. I mean, think about it. You probably 13, 12, 14, you're what, 7th or 8th grade? Just getting a GED is a big thing. So we have all of these needs that need to be addressed, and we have a team of social workers who are going to work hand in hand with help regain that autonomy. So today, we're going to be able to define human trafficking, describe the 2 types of trafficking we see here in the US, identify a potential trafficking situation, how we can assist with trauma-informed care, and what resources are available. When I teach our healthcare workers, I equate human trafficking to a disease. We want to be able to identify the disease. What are the symptoms of that disease, the variants? How can we, what resources are available? What prescriptions, what treatment options? I know I butchered that analogy, but hopefully it resonates in some way to where that's how we want to look at human trafficking. I'm going to play this quick video, just really kind of gets down to what human trafficking is pictured as. Oh, excuse me.
Every day we go about our lives driven by routine and blindfolded to the realities of the world around us. Our vision is clouded by the very normalcy we take
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
for granted. Countless victims of human trafficking walk among us, seemingly invisible. Until now. The Blue Campaign provides a unified voice for those who oppose the heinous crime of human trafficking. Whether it's forced labor, domestic servitude, or the sex trade, it's time we open our eyes.
Sorry, I didn't even see you.
You're one of us.
Learn what you can do to help by visiting dhs.gov/bluecampaign.
Just real quick, can everybody hear the audio? Is it all right? Everyone can hear it? Perfect. So like I said, human trafficking is something that happens almost in plain sight, but it is hard to really even take notice of it. If I had to go around the Zoom, which don't worry, I'm not going to do, and ask all of you what human trafficking looks like, I'm sure I would get a lot of answers, and they would all be different. Yet, I don't believe any of them would be that wrong. Okay. But what we want to do is really boil down human trafficking to what it is. And just like how any crime that, any criminal enterprise there is, the way we identify it, the way it's described is in the law that's passed to outlaw it. Does anyone want to take a guess on what year the United States federally passed a law outlawing human trafficking? We're going to see who the optimists and the pessimists are in the room here. Okay, 2020, 2010. All right. Dr. Guzman, 95. I love the 80s. Christine is our optimist here. It is actually the year 2000. The year 2000 is when we passed a law outlawing human trafficking. We passed it through what's called the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA. And we were the first country to pass a law outlawing human trafficking. So go us, go USA. In outlawing human trafficking, we use what's called the AMP model to describe human trafficking. Okay. We have the action, okay, means for the purpose, okay? An action by a means for purpose of sexual exploitation and or labor exploitation. Okay, and when we say means, we reference a means of control, force, fraud, and coercion. Okay, and this is kind of the meat of the sandwich. If AMP is the sandwich, means is the meat. This is the language that's used, force, fraud, and coercion in the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. It's within the Texas Penal Code. It's what the United Nations State Department. These are the key terms we use to describe human trafficking. And like I said, means is a means of control. Force can look like kidnapping or starvation, physical abuse. Fraud is usually a form of false romantic relationships or a job offer. Traffickers are wooing their victim or dating them, taking them out to eat, buy them gifts, convincing their victims that they're in a relationship. And once that trust has been established, the trafficker will convince the victim to engage in sexual or labor exploitation for them. In coercion, what we see is like blackmail, threats, taking ID papers, school IDs, passports. In the scheme of things, we see most often fraud and coercion as the most popular means. Force is something we see used to maintain control over somebody once they're being exploited. And the purpose of that is for sexual or labor exploitation. Now, we have to prove all three elements exist for it to be considered human trafficking, except when we encounter a minor who is a victim of sexual exploitation. Now, what is it about a minor to where we no longer need to prove the means of being sexually exploited? What can a minor not do? Consent. Thank you, Dr. Guzman. That's absolutely right. A minor cannot consent to sex. There's no such thing as a child prostitute. Okay. There's only sexual exploitation of a child. This is why we have mandatory reporting. Okay. 72% of all prosecuted sex trafficking convictions involve a minor of some kind. Okay. So this is what makes up human trafficking: the action, means, and purpose. Okay, I promise I know it's late. I'm going to keep the questions down to a minimum, but I do want to ask, does anybody want to take a guess on how many people are trafficked worldwide in a given year? Millions, 100,000? Okay. Okay. This is what we're looking at here. This is from the International Labor Organization. And before I get too in the weeds of statistics, I do want to say these are conservative numbers, okay? Meaning we can only go off what's reported. These numbers are probably higher than what they actually are. Just like how you can't equate for crime based on how many 911 calls come in a given day, okay? So over 27 million people are estimated to be trafficking victims. And then we're looking at additional 22 million who are in forced marriages. And when I say forced marriages, I'm not talking about people who are culturally arranged marriages that you see in some countries. I'm talking about when a 14-year-old is forced to marry a 42-year-old, okay, and enter into a life of domestic servitude and sexual exploitation. Okay. And here's a breakdown of that. Now, is that breakdown surprising to anybody? I'll be honest, it surprised me. Okay. What surprised me was the age. If 75%, or if majority of kids or people who are trafficked are between the ages of 12 and 14, how come they only account for 25% of human trafficking? Well, I thought about this case when I was living in India. I heard it was a labor trafficking case, and the agency I worked for, International Justice Mission, shut down this brick kiln where people were forced to make bricks by hand. And when they're interviewing the victims, one man told a story where he took out a very cheap loan. He was 14 years old, needed to help provide his family. I think it was around $50. And, went to the brick owner, said, "Hey, I will work for you. I promise to work for you every day, making bricks by hand, I think for $2 a day until I pay you back." The brick owner said, "Great, sign here," gave him the money, really took advantage of the fact they lived in a rural area. There was no banks, there was no other way to get some of a loan like that. But that's what he did. He went to a factory and said, if you give me this up front, I'll work for you. So that's what the boy did. He worked there. After a month or so, he went to the brick kiln owner and said, "Hey, just want to make sure I'm all caught up. You know, should be good." And the factory owner said, "No, you owe me equivalent to, I believe it was like $200. He said, "How do I owe you that much money when I only took out a loan of 50? He said, "For every day you didn't pay me back, that's an additional $10 to put on your tab." The time I interviewed him, he was in his 60s. Okay. Third generation slaves. So while we see the entry point to be at a young age, it is not a life that's easily left. Because how can you ever pay somebody back if you make this much money a day, but the interest, you can't keep up with it. Okay. That's debt bondage. And you can say, okay, that's a different part of the world. That's India. There's a lot of things that happen, here, or there's a lot of things we have going for us here. Not only in America, but in Texas. Surely trafficking should be non-existent, right? Well, it's a Texas issue. Okay. Oh, hold on. So this is from the University of Texas. In 2016, they did a study to find out how many victims of human trafficking there are in Texas. Again, it should be considered that this is a conservative estimate. But they found that there are about 313,000 victims in Texas, over 79,000 minor victims of sex trafficking, and 234 victims of labor trafficking. Full disclosure, this study did not include data for adult victims of sex trafficking. Okay. So just imagine what that number is. And going by today's population models, this number has more than likely doubled. Does anybody want to take a guess what makes Texas a hub for human trafficking? Why is the landscape in Texas make it so easy or seem like it can be so prevalent here? Close to the border. Yeah, border does play a huge part. But there's also a lot of other things that go into making not only Texas, but Houston a place where trafficking happens. Number one, our proximity to the border does play a huge part. Ms. Settles named it perfectly, I-10. I-10 is considered the trafficking pipeline for the United States by the FBI. It goes from Florida to California. And we have a major airport, international airport. We have a very, very diverse labor sector, okay, where you can be trafficked, whether it's, landscaping, construction, entertainment, restaurants, working in the port. There's a lot of avenues in which someone can get trafficked. We have the most diverse city in the US. I love that I can have a breakfast burrito, for breakfast. I can go to my Italian deli, get chicken parm, and eat some leftover Thai for dinner. Okay. I love that we have such diversity here in Houston, but that makes our job so much more difficult. There's over 100 languages spoken here in Houston. So we have to make sure all of our literature is translated. There's representation for all the nationalities, advocacy. It's really hard to reach everybody. So what is Houston doing? Well, we have what's called the Human Trafficking and Rescue Alliance. It's our regional task force made up of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. Their main focus is on investigation and prosecution. We were the first city to have a special advisor to the mayor. It was a position created specifically to institutionalize Houston's response to trafficking. And what the special advisor to the mayor does works with different departments and sectors to raise awareness, enhance resources to be available both to victims and survivors, and ensure that there's transparency in supply chains. Is anybody excited for the World Cup coming up? No, that's a no from Lisa. Okay. Sorry, Lisa, my free ticket isn't going to you. Well, when we submitted a bid to host the World Cup, we had to include in that bid how we plan on addressing human trafficking. Dr. Bina Patel Davis, who is our special advisor to the mayor on human trafficking, she helped on that bid, helped develop policies and practices for the city of Houston on how we plan on combating human trafficking. Okay. And I mentioned before that we have our coalition, okay, that notion of it takes a village where we can share coordinator efforts, knowledge, and resources on how to better fight human trafficking, serve survivors. So that's what we're doing here in Houston. I do want to highlight one thing that's often confused as human trafficking, okay, and that is smuggling. Now, how is human smuggling different from human trafficking? I'm gonna go ahead and pick on Miss Molina since she says she's not a fan of the World Cup coming here. But I don't know if you know this about Lisa, everybody. She's a big fan of the movie Wicked, aren't you, Lisa? Yeah. Lisa, do you mind telling in the chat what your favorite soft drink and soda is? Or sorry, what your favorite soft drink and candy is? While I take a drink of mine. She's thinking hard here. Oh, Big Red and peanut M&Ms. Calm down. Okay. So when Lisa goes to watch the movie Wicked, she's painting herself green. Lisa's very, very smart. Okay. She's not gonna spend 20 bucks just on a Big Red and a pack of M&Ms. What does she do? What do we all do? Let's be honest. What do we do if we're going to the movie theater? All right, you're under oath, everybody. Don't lie here. We go to CVS. We go to the gas station. That's right. Love it. Claim it. There you go. We sneak it in. Okay. We don't, listen, we're all, here to serve society. We're not here for the big bucks. We might do with what we can. So when Lisa goes to scan her ticket with her contraband in her purse, but she's, painted green, right? Except for Wicked. And she goes to scan her ticket. Is she violating the rules of the movie theater by bringing snacks in, or is she violating the rules of the ticket taker? Which one is it? That's right. She's violating the rules of the movie theater. Okay. It's the same when it comes to smuggling and trafficking. Smuggling is a crime against a border. Trafficking is a crime against a person. Now, smuggling can turn into trafficking, okay, because smuggling can be the action. And then if we see, if we look at the means, someone smuggled for the purpose of coercing them into trafficking or coercing them into labor trafficking, that's when it becomes human trafficking. Okay. That's why we have what's called the A&P model. So thank you, Lisa, to get tickets to go see Wicked. So what leads to exploitation? Going back to the medical analogy I used, It's hard to say, okay, what conditions can lead to someone being exploited? Think about pre-existing conditions. If you have family history of heart disease, you are at a higher risk of that. There's a lot of things that can lead to someone's higher rate of vulnerability. Number one is the ACE score. Okay. Does anyone know what ACE means? It's an adverse childhood experience. Okay. Whether they have a parent who's incarcerated or they're in the system, foster care, juvenile justice, they come from a home of domestic violence. All these things heighten somebody's vulnerability or higher risk factor to them being exploited. If you've recently relocated to a country, if you have a marginalized identity, and what I mean by that is if you are part of a group, like the LGBT group, where many of them are kicked out of their homes based on their sexual preference. They have what's called survival sex, meaning they will get pimped out. Again, it's not always for money. It can be for food, shelter. It can be for drugs. I had a disclosure where a boy was trafficked for a cell phone. Okay. A lack of awareness is a big thing. There's a lot of correlation between domestic violence victims and those who've been trafficked. But the number one risk factor is social isolation. Okay, let me give you an example here. I teach the advanced human trafficking class at the Houston Police Academy, and they're very, very strict there. Okay, where if you are late, you have to go to report to the desk sergeant, and then they send you to the class, and you have to ask the class or ask the instructor if you can still attend. That happened one time. Okay, there's an officer that came in late and apologized. He said if he was stuck behind a train, he was about 20 minutes late, and asked if he could still attend. And it's a relatively small class, so I said, absolutely, sure. But you did miss our warm-up exercise where if we went around the room and mentioned, who we are, what precinct we work at, and what we like to do when we're not working. And he said, okay, well, my name's Officer, so I'm not going to, this is going on YouTube, I'm not going to use his name, respect his privacy. I work downtown, and when I'm not on duty, I like to build with Star Wars Legos. Now, he was pretty pissed when he found out that he was the only one that mentioned he likes Star Wars Legos. And he told a bunch of his peers, and understandably so. I guarantee you he would not have done it if everyone, in the class behind me was saying, don't do it. None of us did it. He's lying to you. But he was isolated at that moment, and I used that power dynamic I had saying, hey, I have something that you want. In order for you to get that accreditation, this is what you have to do. Look what, all the people are sitting here. They did it. All right. Why wouldn't you do it? Think about that in a dating context. Hey, I know you've never had a boyfriend before, but this is what it looks like. Or think about immigration context. Hey, I know you're new to the country, but this is what it looks like to pay me back. Think about, look at everybody else who's working and doing the same thing. All right. Do you think, you're better than them? Do you think that, you have a better way of doing it? No. When you socially isolate someone, you can dictate the terms and conditions and beliefs they may have, and what they think is fair or what they think is tolerable. That's how social isolation is number one risk factor. I'm glad Michelle just joined because we're gonna play a game. I don't know if you guys have played this game before. All right. I don't know if AFT, you guys, sit around, but we're going to play what's called Guess the Traffickers. Okay. I have 6 pictures on here, and one of them is a trafficker. And I want to see who can detect who the trafficker is. Jamie, you think you got this? Are you a pretty good judge of character? Okay, not a lot of confidence. Everybody keep an eye on Jamie. What about you, Dr. Morales? You got this? Okay, all right. I'm worried about you all. All right. So we have number 1 here. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. And number 6. Okay. Now, who thinks it's number 1? Anybody? Show of hands. Okay, Lisa thinks it's number 4. Interesting. Ooh, Dr. Guzman thinks it's 4 as well. Interesting. It's a couple. Oh, 5, 2, 2, 4, 3. Okay. What if I was to tell you Wendy thinks it could be any of them? You're correct, Wendy, because you know what? All these people were arrested for trafficking. Okay. Every single one of these pictures. And this goes to show that there is no profile of a trafficker. It's not tied to any ethnicity, any age, any gender. Let me give you some context here. Number 1, that's Barbara Barrett. She trafficked her adopted foster children. I'll say that again. Barbara Barrett trafficked her adopted foster children outside her home in Dallas with her husband, Jeffrey. 3 boys, 3 girls, 1 boy, took them out of school and forced them to work in a puppy mill that was attached to her home. Her husband, Jeffrey, would sexually molest the women, and Barbara would film it and distribute it as child pornography. Number 2, as Rita Law. Yes, she ran 2 day spas in Chicago and brought women from Asia to sexually exploit them in the spas. She used a fake marriage scheme to bring the women there to Chicago and then confiscate their passports. Rita told the victims, "You have to pay me $100,000. You have a debt of $100,000." To coerce them into commercial sexual exploitation, where they had to work 14 hours a day. 1 woman had a miscarriage, and Rita continued to force her to work. Number 3 is Andrew Fields. He was both involved in drug trafficking and sex trafficking. What he would do is he would get young girls addicted to his drug supply in order for them to get the next hit. He would give them the drugs, he would keep the money, and he would pimp them out. Number 4, the Toures, Toure. They come from New Guinea to be permanent residents here in the U.S. They came from a wealthy family. And before they moved here, there was a young girl from their town who wanted to come work and send money to support her family back home. So they arranged for her to travel with them and live in America. And once she arrived in America, the couple said, "Okay, hey, how about we'll just, instead of paying you, we'll just send you the money back home, or we'll deal with it. We'll send it to your parents. We'll make sure they're taken care of." Worked there for 16 years. All the time, they never sent any money back to her home. They called the young girl a dog, a slave, worthless. They hit her on multiple occasions. She was forced to sleep in the park, or she's supposed to sleep in the kitchen on the floor, but whenever they had company over, she would sleep in the park. Okay. Number 5, that's Maximino Moondragon. Okay. He and his network lured and smuggled young women from Central America to Houston with the promise of good, high-paying jobs. Once they were in Houston, they used threats, debt bondage, and false promises to traffic them into forced labor and commercial sexual exploitation in bars and cantinas, many of them off Telephone Road, not too far from downtown. One of the largest trafficking rings that was uncovered in the U.S., over 120 women were receiving assistance when U.S. authorities intervened. And lastly, that is Apollo Quibble. He is a high-profile Filipino pastor, and I use the word pastor loosely, currently charged with labor trafficking and sexual abuse. Between 2002 and 2018, Apollo Quibble and his accomplices recruited women and young girls as young as 12 to work as personal assistants or pastors in training. Okay. They ordered the girls to cook and prepare meals, clean their multiple residences, ordered them to give massages, and then also said they have what's called nightly duties, meaning they have to engage in sexual acts with him. Okay. So like I said earlier, there is no typical profile of a trafficker. But I will say there is one common thread that unites all 6 of these traffickers together. Does anybody want to take a guess on what that common factor is? All of them trusted their trafficker. None of them were walking home from school when a van pulled up and, they're forced in the back. They all trusted their trafficker. Whether it was they were a parent figure, whether it was someone promising a better job, whether it was someone that was trusted in their community, such as a pastor, all of them had the trust of the victim. Okay. Was called familial trafficking or relational trafficking. In fact, Polaris did a study where they want to know the total number of victims and what the known recruitment tactics are. Okay. When it came to labor trafficking, 80% of those were recruited through a job offer or advertisement, whether it's in person or online. When it came to sex trafficking, 36% were trafficked by people familiar with them. Okay. 34% were trafficked through intimate partner or marriage. Okay. Overall, 6%, less than 6% was abduction. And I know we grew up with the idea of stranger danger, and which is a good rule of thought, but that doesn't reflect the reality of what trafficking looks like. In our workshops, our biggest hurdle is how can we talk about trafficking without directly mentioning trafficking? So we, do workshops on surrounding what relationship boundaries look like, or, how to recognize grooming with an adult or love bombing. Talk about the different forms of abuse, whether it's financial or sexual, emotional. So we can do these brain building activities to strengthen the resolve in the areas that we see often exploited. And I know I'm talking to a bunch of smart people here. I'm a data nerd. I love understanding the data and looking at the context. But I want to share with you also the victim stories, because I feel like that's more important, or just as important, if not more. And I want you to pay attention and really kind of pinpoint something that stuck with you. I'll ask you about it after the video is over.
I was just walked into it, I guess. The dancing, just, hey, all you have to do is go in there and take your clothes off.
Can you
And
guys hear this? Okay.
was there 2
Yes.
weeks working before I met my pimp and left with him. Blackout drunk.
One day he asked me if I wanted to go to Hollywood. And I mean, what young girl doesn't want to go to Hollywood, right? I felt like really good about that. I felt like, wow, he wants me to go with him. Like, he must really care about me. He must really love me, like he says.
I come from a small reservation community. I never had access to like the latest designer clothes or jewelry or nice restaurants or anything like that. So he would take me out and buy me clothes, take me out to eat, really try to be like the knight in shining armor. And unbeknownst to me, what I found out later is he was a 3rd generation pimp.
I wasn't in the life right away. I met my husband, and that's when I really started to know more about it, because his dad was a pimp and his mom was his hoe. With that family, they feel like it is more appropriate for a woman to take care of her man. Then it was just like them brainwashing me and putting this in my head that I I have that one thing that every man wants and that I could sell it and make so much money super fast just for this one thing that I have as a woman.
We found some guy on Craigslist that said he was doing swimsuit modeling. We went the first time, just did the swimsuits, and then he told us about, you can make more money if you take your top off, if you take your bottom off.
For a few years, I started answering phones. So I was the one that you would call the escort service, legal in Las Vegas, and set up dates for each lady and building friendships with each one, hearing their stories. I seen what was more like a movie rather than reality.
I understood there would be adult film activity. I mean, it was being an adult film model. And I thought, all right, I'll just do this and then I'll go back home and graduate and nothing will come of it. That turned out a very big company that just put not my face, but another part of me on their front of their website, like the day after I graduated high school. So
I started asking the girls, let me go on these calls with you when I get off. And I eventually just talked my way into coming on some of these calls. And it was like seeing the backside of the movie I was watching. The phones ring nonstop, and the door becomes a revolving door. Everybody's involved, from the bellhops to the security, the front desk, because there's money to be made in the full circle.
I saw a lot of the girls that were in the same house as me start doing scenes with like 20 guys or scenes with really aggressive men and worse stuff. And I kept saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And after a while, I wasn't getting as much work. That was when I learned about privates, where people really wanted porn stars to come and have sex with them. And so it was like a private escorting company. And I remember at the beginning thinking, I would never do that. Like,
Everything was fine for a short time period. And then all of a sudden it comes with, we don't have the money to pay the rent. I promise nobody's going to touch you. If you go and you dance for these guys this one night, I won't ask you to do it again. You can make all this money. We'll be able to have the rent. But in all actuality, if you allow yourself to step out of your ethics, it's really difficult to get back. I made a lot of money dancing. Nobody touched me, but it was all part of the grooming process. It was to get me to expand my my values and to be able to step over that threshold into being exploited.
I realized what I got into and that it was not, didn't feel good. So I kind of just was like, well, I had a good way of just saying, you signed up for this, like just ride on through, like put your game face on. You are here and you have no way of getting back.
Every chance that I got, I would tell my husband, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to leave. I want to go. And he would tell me, so you're going to leave and let another woman take care of your husband? That's what he would tell me. That's how he would get me to stay.
I didn't have any boundaries. I had started to become the identity that was the person in front of the camera. Like, I became this like sexy 18-year-old that was getting paid to, have sex and get flown places and have her hair and makeup done and be told she's beautiful and,
How did your life evolve from there?
Sorry. Just got pretty ugly. And pretty, I was just, just ugly and lonely.
He made me think it was my fault. So I was taught that my body is it's a vessel. It's something that you hold close to yourself. It's like the most precious thing that you can have, or that a woman can have, is herself. And my husband just had me giving it away.
I don't know why I'm different. What made me not be like all my other friends who had the same experiences and came home and ended up getting married and having careers. I'm not dumb, but I was so desperate. Somebody to
Oh, sorry. I want to catch that last part there.
I'm not dumb, but I was so desperate. Somebody to want to be around me and want to be with me.
Now, I've seen that video a number of times. Each time I watch it, there's something that sticks out to me. But I would love to know if there's anything that stuck out to any of you. Feel free to, come off mute and say it or type it out. I'd love to know your thoughts. I think for me, it was that last quote that woman said, where she said, "I'm not dumb. I was just desperate for someone to want to be with me." The low self-esteem, how easy it was for them to fall into it. Yeah. We saw the grooming that took place. Hey, you'll make more money if you take your top off. You know, that woman, another woman, the woman from the reservation, described it perfectly, where she said, like, her boundaries were being tested. Once you're outside those boundaries, it's hard to get back to them. Okay. And this is why, it's so important when we talk to our kids about what boundaries look like. Trafficking isn't what we see in the movies or TVs where it's taken, legally married. It is very, very common. Relational exploitation. And also a lot of kids say, okay, I wouldn't be human trafficker. When we do talk about where we're from, we say, well, how many of you guys think you're good friends? You're a loyal and good friend, and all the kids raise their hand. And then we say, well, what if your friend was dating a guy that was, or someone that made them act a certain way? Wouldn't you want to, be able to help them out? Like, don't you want to learn, the equivalent of like learning CPR, in case your friend, falls over or something happens? That way we can talk to kids and they register it versus kind of just, brushing it off. But that is commonly the most common way. Did it change perspectives for anybody? From data statistics to hearing from women themselves what it looked like to be exploited? That one woman who talked about her husband, who said, "You're gonna let some other woman take care of me." I think it speaks to the trauma bonding and the manipulation that exists in those relationships. They use the promise of making money for themselves or their loved ones to manipulate them. Yeah, absolutely. We had a client who met a guy off a dating app. Hit it off 8 months. She moved in and he lost his job and said, or one of them lost her job. He's like, hey, how about you go dance? And, we were $200 short and you want to go back and live with your mom, right? Why don't you? Oh, my friend's having a party, I promise no one's going to touch you, similar to what is being heard. It's that slippery slope. So we hear these stories and we think, what would make someone stay in that relationship? Well, there's that debt bondage, that fear retaliation, trauma bonding. There is a compounded sense of mistrust, whether it is due to immigration status or by law enforcement. Hey, if you go to the cops, they're going to throw you in jail. They're not going to care about you, or you're undocumented. But again, I think it's important to hear from survivors themselves what it looked like for them.
Sex. I think for people just hearing about it, of course, it sounds simple, right? She's not tied by a leash to her trafficker. It's really realistic that every single time they have to go on the track, they're ready to go, to leave. But there's so much more behind that. No job history, not being able to work, not having identification.
I had a criminal record. I had no credit. I was not able to get an apartment. I wasn't able to get a job. I identified myself as a prostitute.
There's all these people who have jobs and go jogging and, do stuff like that, and it was like, I didn't know how to do any of that. I was in this subculture. And the subculture is so different than the square world, I mean, I just never thought that I would be normal. I never thought that I would be out of the life. Never.
My husband.
So that kind of displays why it's so hard. What exit paths do people have? One of my biggest pet peeves is when people use the word rescue. Like, oh, you're rescued out of this trafficking situation. Oh, the police rescued you. There's a litany of needs, that are people face getting out, which I'll touch on. But in your role, how can all of you best recognize and help victims of trafficking? Okay, now that we've defined human trafficking, let's talk about how we can recognize and help survivors. For instance, I did mention labor trafficking is very, very hard to identify a lot of the times, and not that you'll ever see, residences, but if you hear kids talk about how it's very crowded, a lot of people in one living space, they live on the ground they work. A lot of times they're locked in. Sometimes, when it comes to construction labor trafficking, a lot of them live on site. And the fencing around it looks like it's made to keep people in versus out. They can only buy things through their employer, and again, ratchets up their tab. So again, we're looking for an unusual amount of security in respect to the size and nature of the location, or just how cramped it is in living style. Some other red flags, some physical ones, can be tattoos or scars or literal branding. Okay. Physical abuse or sexual abuse, neglected symptoms. A lot of times, as I mentioned in Rita Law's case, she had the woman she trafficked had a miscarriage, and Rita forced her to work. And a lot of times, traffickers and pimps are not going to take somebody to get health services until to the point where they can't work anymore. Because when they take that person out of rotation, that's some money they're losing. So you might see neglected health injuries or symptoms. And when you ask them, how did they get that? They'll, say, oh, I fell, or I walked in, or I tripped. Some medical conditions, rashes, infection, poor skin, chronic pain. Even though they're very, very young, they have back issues or knees or joints. A lot of times the gastrointestinal issues, they can't really eat a lot without getting sick. Some red flags when it comes to sexual abuse. These are things that doctors are trained to look out for, and nurses that give, that raise flags concerning someone being sexually exploited. When it comes to behavioral, one big thing is the story inconsistency. I think I saw some of your profile pictures. You guys are moms. I always say use your parent brain. I have two younger brothers. You know, whenever my mom, like a window got broken, she would all question us separately. You know, how this window get broken? I would say a bird flew in it. My brother would say, we have windows. And the youngest one would, he's a snitch, would point at me. We're no longer talking. But having that story inconsistency is a big red flag. Another one is promiscuity that's uncharacteristic. And I'm not talking about what people wear. I'm talking about also slang for genitals or for sex acts. And another thing is a controlling presence. That's a big thing. For instance, if I was going to ask Jamie how her day is, but Dr. Morales kept interrupting me, saying, "Oh, she's fine. She's good. Oh, you know, you look tired. You get enough sleep, Jamie? Oh, no, no, she, you know, Jamie's just, you know, she's fine. She just had a rough day, you know." Someone who constantly interjects, Jamie, is that how it is? Blink twice if that's your working condition. Okay, you're in the clear. When someone's constantly interjecting and having that controlling presence, that's a big red flag. And this may be a surprise to some of you, but traffickers aren't great people. Okay. They sometimes have they have warrants out. So they're not going to want to enter into a school or enter into a hospital. So how do you maintain controlling? How can you maintain your control over somebody without physically being there? Your cell phone. Okay. When we did outreach on some high trafficking areas where we had a table set up with, you know, Red Bull and the hotline number on tubes of lipstick and phone charging station, a lot of times the women, um, they would kind of circle the table, and then once they approached, they would be on the phone with their pimp, because the pimp wants to know what they're saying to us and what we're saying to them. Okay. And that can exist in headphones one's wearing, where they could be receiving instructions, or the pimp wants to know, are there watches, or so many different ways. But phones are a big way. Another one is complex some trauma red flags, dissociation, poor interpersonal skills, depression. I mean, think about how if you're raped multiple times a day from the age of 14, what that does for your cognitive development. Okay. Trouble with memory, depression, all these things can give light to a trauma or how someone may react to trauma. Okay. You may see one or a number of these symptoms on your students, and even if they're not being trafficked, but if you know these symptoms in conjunction with other red flags, then you could start asking more questions. A big thing that you know, in terms of best practice on how to approve or how to approach someone, is separating potential victims from suspected traffickers and from other victims. Now, I know it's kind of tricky in a context from a parent and child standpoint, but there are ways where you can work on developing a protocol. And let me show you an example of what that looks like.
I'm sorry if this is making you late. I can stay here by myself if that helps.
You know that can't work. Look, I need you to be home when I call you from work, or else I start to worry about where you are.
Of course.
Besides, I want to know what's going on with you as much as you do.
Sure.
Good. Now, I'm glad that you're thinking this through.
Hey, Jocelyn? Yes. Oh, good. And you are?
I'm Jocelyn's husband, Michael.
Well, I'm glad you came in. We like to see supportive husbands. Now I'm going to take Jocelyn in the back and we'll come get you later on in the visit, okay?
Well, I figured since I am her husband, I'd be able to go back there as well, especially since I came with her today. Besides, I'm worried about the symptoms she's been having.
Yes. I'm sorry, it's just clinic policy. We always see the patients first by themselves and then come back and get friends and family later afterwards.
Oh, okay, that's disappointing. All right, I'll be here waiting for the call back.
Great. There are magazines in the corner, I think Men's Health and People.
That's okay. I'm fine.
Jocelyn, come on back.
All right, so we saw that think about how differently that could have well, first off, was there any red flags that stuck out to any of you? Jamie, I see you nodding. What stuck out to you?
Yeah, just the fact that he wouldn't allow her to go back there by herself. I mean, he like wanted to be with her the whole time. Like he didn't want
Yeah.
her out of his sight.
Right. When she said, "I'm sorry I'm making you late," if you want to head home, did he say, "Oh no, I took the day off," or "Oh, I'm working remote today"? What did he say? What did he say? He said, "You know that doesn't work, right?" Now, what would happen if the aide, and this can be not just a nurse, but any kind of office aide, said, "All right, what's your deal? What's your deal, man? You're giving me this weird vibe, just I'm sorry, like what's going on with you?" Do you think they would have stayed? No. No. They would have checked out of that school, they would have gone somewhere else, but when you displace the blame onto like a policy, like, "Hey, it's just our policy that parents have to wait out here for security reasons," you're creating that ability to separate that person from their trafficker and ask them questions. And sometimes you're gonna have to be a little bit creative. I was teaching the paramedics, and one of them said, "What if the person wants to ride in the back of the ambulance with them?" And I was like, "Make something up. Say they're not certified or blah, 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 blah. They're not insured. You know, um, but also this is your time to, you don't want the first time you encounter this situation to be at a place where you have to think of a reason. And I'm going to give you some resources to help develop a policy in your school. But I love the way she handled it, saying, "Hey, we love seeing supportive husbands. If it was up to me, you'd be back there, but it is what it is." She did throw some shade saying, "Go read some Men's Health," which I appreciate. Um, okay. So what does it look like to be trauma informed? And we're wrapping up here, folks. Um, you know, we talked about the compounded trauma, and believe it or not, there's a study done saying that the same cortisol levels of someone who's been trafficked have the same amount of okay, let me word this better. The same amount of cortisol that's found in someone who's trafficked are found within people who have seen live combat and veterans. Okay, that speaks to the stress levels. So when it comes to trauma, you want to be very patient. All right. Trust is built over time. I used to oversee the Houston hotline for trafficking victims. And a lot of times there's people that would call once a week for months on it. All right. You have to be patient. You can't say, "Hey, you better leave now." It has to be on their time. It has to be a trust. A lot of times, school can be busy. We have a to-do list and something happens, right? Okay, how am I going to incorporate this? A lot of times it's being present's hard. All right. Sometimes we're on autopilot. Sometimes we're thinking about other stuff going on at home. People can sometimes detect that and make them question whether or not they should have came to you. There's a lot of shame that's attached to people who've experienced sexual or labor exploitation, especially at a young age. The stigma that's attached, being called a slut or a whore, or how they're seen, whether it's by their family or by their peers, so they may feel a lot of shame. It's not to kind of say, "Hey, it's not a problem," but to say, "Hey, I understand you may be embarrassed, but I care more about how you're doing." Okay. But more than anything, you want to ask open-ended questions. Okay. When you go down a checklist saying, "Hey, has anyone touched you, below the waist? Has anyone done this? Yes or no?" More than likely, they're going to say no. So it's important to say, "Hey, when's the last time you got a good amount of sleep?" That guy you're walking with, is that your dad? Is he a boyfriend? Like, should I put him on your contact list? Hey, that purse looks expensive. Where are you working at to be able to afford that? Questions like that, it helps build the rapport and also gain the trust and provides context. So you want to think of open-ended ways you can ask questions that are pertinent to gaining information. So the my step victim, I just want to touch on this. A lot of times it's not a linear path. Okay, there's a lot of times where people they relapse. Okay, it's almost like you can't force sobriety onto somebody. Okay, this is the change model. It's used to understand victims of domestic violence and the barriers they face to leave the situation. And as outsiders, it's tempting for us to look at people in these exploit situations and believe that they could leave if they want to. But due to the trauma bonding, the psychological manipulation they formed, and the trafficking situation, it's not easy for them to leave, even if they're oppressed and subject to violence. Okay. A lot of times, I think a study has shown that a domestic violence victim it could take 7 to 9 times going through these stages of change before they leave for good. So the best thing you can do is just be patient and be consistent with them. When we go to jail every Friday, the fact that the women tell us, hey, you're the most consistent thing we have. Building that trust, being that teacher that's there every day, asking how their day is, that goes a long way. When to involve law enforcement, when it's someone's preference or they pose immediate danger to a staff or patient. This is a slide from our healthcare presentation. When it comes to framing services, each survivor is expert on their experience. You want to empower them to create solutions rather than saving them or telling them what they need. Again, you want to empower that person versus making them feel more helpless and dependent on you. A lot of times when I ran the Houston trafficking hotline, all the operators were female. And when there was an overflow of calls, I would get them. And I was able to talk to a lot of victims of trafficking and able to convince them to leave their pimp. And I was telling a friend of mine who's a social worker, I said, I really value the times I get to connect with callers and convince them to leave their trafficker or their pimp. And she told me, Taylor, this is not about you. They're just used to men telling them what to do. Okay. So again, you have to be in a place to empower them. I know sometimes, it's going to really rile us up in a way where we want to, that protector wants to come out, but we want to be that person who encourages them and is there for them. Survivor needs are very complex. When you get out of a traffic situation, it's immediate needs, whether it's providing food or shelter, new clothing. There's a lot of trauma attached to their clothing. From there, employment assistance, legal advocacy. How can we support that community of love, and just like how any of us surround them and continue visit or having services to address the trauma that's informed. Okay. And again, sometimes it's one step forward, 2 steps back. There's a lot of relapse that happens. We live in the most diverse city in the world. It's important that we work on addressing the cultural competencies, whether some families feel some women don't want to talk to a man or vice versa, not to be ignorant, but we want to make sure that cultural values and beliefs are respected. If you work in a community where there's a high representation of a culture or a practice, work on building resources. Visit the local, community center, see what resources they have, or maybe they have someone that's telling, connect with the counselors, try to build that network. You never want to, if someone doesn't speak a language, if it's a person, you never want to use a person accompanying them as a translator, because we don't know the context of who that person is. utilize a language line through the school, or whether, again, it's a church. One time we got a call from Ben Taub about a trafficking victim who didn't speak any English. She spoke only Mandarin. Her husband said, "I'll interpret," and the nurses said, "No, it's okay. We'll use our language line," but it was down. They called about 5 Chinese Baptist churches until like one answered at 8 p.m. and was able to come translate. And that woman said that she was trafficked and she just met that man that day. So you never want to use a person identifying. Okay, we're reaching the end here, folks. So what resources are available? How can we recognize and help victims? Well, one, the HC protocol, if it's a minor, is mandatory to report them for failing protective services. You can also place a call with Human Trafficking Hotline if you're in the Houston area, the Children's Assessment Center. If it's an adult, you can help them file a report with law enforcement. You can call the trafficking hotline. If they leave, you can still call a trafficking hotline and give them information. Even if it's just like hey, all I have is a license plate. That could be, the 5th time someone's called about that license plate. Okay. One tool is called the TVIT tool. It is a test or kind of screening tool to see if someone has shows signs of potential exploitation. Okay. There's a 30-question one or a 16 one. It's free. Also, feel free to take pictures of these slides too. I don't want to gatekeep information. Also, the See It tool. It's a research-based screening tool. It helps improve early identification of commercial sexually exploited youth. Okay, it's used in Texas and other agencies across the U.S. These are big things that assist in helping identify potential exploitation. There are immigration remedies as well, whether it is a T visa, a trafficking visa, whether if you can prove that you've been trafficked, we're able to give you a visa. There's a lot of, we never want someone to use being undocumented as a reason why they can't report or come to you. So these are things you could list as remedies. Oops. Also, when it comes to documentation, make sure you're thorough. Okay, you never want to be objective, saying, "Oh, this guy was weird," or "He's giving me the ick." That doesn't really help your case. Talk about the red flags. Talk about the bruising. Give facts, not speculation. Investigators are trained to connect the dots. All right. Lastly, who do you contact for scenarios? This is the National Trafficking Hotline. You can call, you can text it. It is available 24/7, speaks over 200 languages. This is always the one I recommend. You can print it out, put it in your bathrooms at your school. It's in a lot of hospital bathrooms, airport bathrooms. I know trafficking hotlines get a bad rap, but this is the best. They also give report cards for each state on how they're doing their trafficking protocols. Here are some local resources that are available as well if you're in the Houston area, whether it is case management. Rescue Houston is the one I recommend for a victim who's an adult if they need transportation and housing. Is a 24/7 hotline. Here's some resources for minors if you are in the Houston area. I know all of you teachers are well connected to a wealth of resources, but I just want to highlight some that we use here in the greater Houston area. And lastly, we have our own trafficking programs here. We do case management, family huddle, which is like an Al-Anon for families who have a family member who's trafficked, and a Real Talk program. We have we would love to come to your school and do a youth awareness workshop, or come to one of our workshops on talk about boundaries or healthy relationships, we would love to do that. That's our Real Talk program. But lastly, you can say, okay, what good are these resources? What am I going to do? Well, I kind of want to close with a story where there's a teacher. Sorry, it wasn't a teacher. It was a parent who's helping her daughter move into the dorms at UT. You can imagine a chaotic day. In the lobby of the dorm, there's a flyer that says, hey, here are the red flags when it comes to trafficking. And it kind of listed a lot of things we talked about. And this is a mom. She lived in a gated community out in Katy, Texas, the suburbs, if you aren't familiar with Houston. And she's like, that almost sounds like the Seven Dose nanny. She always has these bruises. She's very short with her communication. She never really leaves. Could be nothing, could be something. I'm just going to call the human trafficking hotline and leave a message, or just report it. And this was the result of that.
The main allegation against this Katie couple is that they forced a woman to work as a slave without ever paying her a dime.
The horrific details are just now surfacing. Investigative reporter Jace Larson broke the story on Twitter this afternoon. He's live tonight outside the home, northeast of West Park Toll Road and South Mason Road. Jace?
Yeah, so prosecutors tell us that a 37-year-old woman was brought over from Nigeria. She was promised that here she would be a nanny and paid $100 a month. Well, not only was she not paid, but she says she was beaten and forced to work 20-hour workdays. The family lived here in this large brick home on a cul-de-sac.
Everywhere, people walk in the neighborhood.
Paula Mesh saw all the police there to arrest husband and wife Chudi and Sandra Subando. The allegations in this court filing obtained by Channel 2 are horrific, saying that the nanny was forced to work every day from 5:30 a.m. till 1 a.m., cleaning the house, cooking, and taking care of the children. Prosecutors also say the nanny wasn't allowed to eat fresh food, only permitted to eat the leftovers from previously prepared meals. It gets worse. In order to have milk for her tea, prosecutors say she was forced to strain the milk out of children's bowls of cereal.
I don't know how people can treat other people like that. I mean, I'm compassionate, and I don't know if I could, treat anybody like that.
Neighbors say the children played with other children, but the parents often kept to themselves.
Tell the nanny, but yeah, we don't really talk to them because I think that's very private stuff.
Prosecutors also say the nanny was repeatedly hit, dragged down the hallway by her hair, and threatened with death.
We do crawfish bowls and New Year's Eve and 4th of July, and they would send food, and sometimes they would come out and eat. And the kids, they love to eat and play with all the kids. We have a really good neighborhood. They're from Nigeria.
Well, after years of not being able to use a phone, this woman was able to escape. She made contact with a charity who helped get her in touch with police. We're live in Katy. Jace Larson, KPRC Channel 2 News.
Story on
Sorry.
Park Toll Road.
So I think about that. I think about how if that mom, and her chaotic life just, saw something in a brief moment, internalized it, and was able to make a difference in this woman, resulting in her freedom. And again, this is in a gated community. Okay, this isn't, in the low-income neighborhoods or on the border. This is happening in gated communities. We have to kind of let go of any prejudices that we have. And I say these things not to kind of do scare tactics, but trafficking is everywhere, but to show, let's have all the information possible so we can navigate it. And again, raise our aptitude. If you wouldn't mind just scanning this QR code, let us know how we did. We update these trainings regularly. If it's, hey, have more stats or more case studies, or add less time on guess a trafficker, let us know. You're not going to hurt my feelings. It's anonymous, so don't worry. always want to have the best information available. Let me go also, once you scan, I do want to say that all of our trainings are survivor informed. This was helped, is that a red line? This was helped by Rachel Thomas. She is a survivor and runs a great series on how to talk to your kids. One thing I do also want to highlight is we, as I mentioned before, we are in our 20th year here in Houston, and we're having a big party, okay, on October 20th. And I want to invite all of you to come and join us. And when I say it's a party, it is a party, okay? Yes, it's, a gala, but we're not here to, play Sarah McLachlan music and say for $5 a day, this is going to happen. We're here to celebrate the work that we've done for the last 20 years. There's going to be dancing, open bar. We would love for you to join us if you're in the Houston area. If you're not, come make a weekend out of it. I promise you won't be disappointed. These are our socials that we have. If you want to follow us, that's where we talk about all of our events we have going on. And lastly, if you have any questions, I'm a slow processor. Okay. After this, I'll be eating dinner and think, oh man, I should have mentioned this. If there's a question that you don't think of till tomorrow, feel free to shoot me an email. That is my phone call, even leaving a message. I'd be more than happy to help answer it. Or if you would like us to come talk at your school, we would love to kind of walk you through what our programming looks like. All of our services are free. Okay. So again, we'd love for you to continue conversation. But I want to thank you all for taking time. I know it's late. I know it's always an odd hour, 6 and 8, but thank you for being present and asking great questions.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for joining us tonight and bringing this information to us. So for the participants, Dr. Morales will be sending a follow-up email with information that Taylor shared with us tonight, along with a link to the recording for you to go back and review it. It will also be posted on the Bridges YouTube channel for review and for you to be able to share it with your colleagues. Only those that participated in the live webinar tonight will receive a certificate from the Bridges Institute. As you all know, we are TEA accredited, so you do get CPE credit to go towards your Texas teacher certification. And so you'll receive that in the coming days from Dr. Morales. Dr. Morales, did you have anything else that you would like to add?
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We appreciate your time. And Taylor, a couple of participants were asking if you would post the sign-in. Perfect, thank you. And I was trying to get rid of that red line. I'm not sure how that happened. And for some reason, it's not letting me erase it, but I want you to know that I was trying.
Okay.
But thank you,
There we
everyone,
go.
for being here. Thanks. You will receive a follow-up email from me with, the information that we shared today. Taylor, if you want to share the slides and you email those to me, or anything else, like the information about the party or any other events, I will make sure that I include that in the follow-up email. Other than that, thank you all for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. And we hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.